Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX05, and EX5 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to be able to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on the Metalgarurumon X deck, or Melga for short. So there is one thing that I do have to mention, and that is the fact that as of March 1st, there are going to be a couple of cards that are going to be limited to one. So those cards are going to be EX5 Gabumon X, EX5 Garurumon X, along with the BT14 Bukamon Egg. So it's not like this is actually going to kill the deck, but while we have it legal, might as well take advantage of it while we can. So this deck, you could build it in either a purple base or a blue base. It kind of doesn't really matter what base you play, it's just personal preference on the types of abilities you're actually looking for, as well as the fact that you could play the deck a little bit more offensive focus or defensive focus. I'm going to be taking a more offensive approach, so that's just the type of player that I am, but you could easily customize the deck to fit your type of playstyle. So because I am more offensive focused, I'm trying to take advantage of the fact that we are a stack-based combo deck that wants to try to OTK or just deal as much damage against the opponent as we possibly can with multiple safe attacks into their security thanks to the new added protection and jamming. Then the deck also has a lot of draw power and ability to filter itself, which makes it a little bit on the faster and more consistent side compared to most other decks. So the biggest weakness of the deck is the fact that, well, it is still a stack-based deck at the end of the day, which comes with its own minor inconsistencies when it comes to finding its parts and pieces, which parts and pieces, and when it's finding them. Outside of that, it also isn't the strongest against effect-based removal, on top of if the opponent just has a big defensive Digimon that you can't deal with, then you could just get walled out of the game very easily, or they could just make it really, really hard for you to even bring out your Digimon and make your big combo turn to begin with. But with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile, starting off with the Digitamers. I'm going to be running 4 copies of Bukamon as the only Digitama that we need. If you wanted to, you could run a 5th Digitama, and the BT5 Sunamon is still pretty decent just for that DP boost, but again, because we have jamming, we don't really need to try to DP boost our Digimon because they're going to be safe swinging into the opponent's security, thanks to this egg specifically. Then, when it comes to the level 3s, I'm going to be running an all Gabumon lineup. So I'm going to be playing 4 copies of Gabumon from BT5 as just a generic digging tool for our other Garurumon and Omnimon named tools. Then I'm also going to be running 4 copies of the Starter Deck 8 Gabumon. If you wanted to, you could kind of run a combination between Starter Deck 8 Gabumon and EX1 Gabumon, just because they're still pretty decent. I just prefer having the DP boost over what EX1 Gabumon is doing, at least for now. But regardless, these are just the extra Gabumons that you're going to be running because they have Gabumon in their name, all for the 4 copies of Gabumon X Antibody from EX5 that I'm going to be running as one of the primary rookies for the deck. So this can digivolve on top of our Sunamons or on top of our Gabumons. Unfortunately, our egg isn't Sunamon, so if you were Sunamon, then you have easy evolution there, but because we're Bukamon, most of the time we're either going to be hard playing this card or digivolving it on top of our other Gabumons. But what this card is doing, whether we're hard playing it or digivolving into it, it's just going to be another searching tool, allowing us to add 2 cards with Garurumon or X Antibody in their names, and then put it into our hand, and then we have to place the rest at the bottom of the deck and discard a card. So it's digging a little bit deeper and getting us more targets at the cost of, well, just losing a card from our hand, which we don't necessarily care about because we could actually start utilizing our trash thanks to its inheritable ability, which is giving it some extra protection, where during all turns, when this Digimon with the Garurumon or Omnimon in its name would be deleted by battle, then we get a return 2 non-Digi-Egg cards from our trash to the bottom of our deck to prevent the deletion, which the top part of the card is helping us set up, on top of just helping us filter through our deck a little bit cleanly and efficiently. Next, on to the level 4s, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Garurumon, the promo version. So this is still just one of the best Garurumon cards that we have to work with because, well, the unrestricted when attacking inheritable to just draw a card as long as it's a Garurumon is just really, really good at making sure that we could be super aggressive and super consistent. On top of the fact that having a Garurumon that has a play cost of 4 sometimes isn't that bad either if we just need to hard play something in case we're a little bit stuck. But I'm also going to be running 2 copies of the BT5 Garurumon just because it allows us to Digivolve a little bit more cleanly on top of our Digimon with Gabumon in its Digivolution source, which we're running in almost all Gabumon lineup, so we reasonably should be able to get this ability to be able to try to tempo out. Its inheritable ability is still pretty decent, where all turns we're just going to get a plus 1000 DP boost for our Digimon being Garurumon or Omnimon, which can be helpful. Then on top of that, I'm going to be running, again, the main star of the show that, like Gabumon X, is going to be limited, and that's going to be the 4 copies of Garurumon X Antibody. So Garurumon X Antibody also can Digivolve on top of our Garurumons for 0 for some clean evolutions. Its when Digivolving ability allows us to draw 2 and then discard 2, which is pretty good cycling on top of setting up our trash for that inheritable ability. That's the exact same as what our Gabumon X was, so it's just more instances of protection, which is just going to be very annoying for the opponent, on top of the fact that if we Digivolved on top of a Garurumon, or it has X Antibody in its Digivolution source, then we get to gain 1 memory. So most of the time when we're Digivolving using this card, we're actually gaining momentum for Digivolving, which is what's making this deck super fast and one of the better decks in the game, because most decks don't gain momentum for utilizing their cards. Next, on to the level 5s, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Where Garurumon, the promo version. So this promo Where Garurumon is what was enabling the OTKs to begin with in Garurumon-based decks, so it was just so strong, it just needed to get limited to 1, which is why we can only run 1 copy. So it has a nice when attacking ability where we get to unsuspend this Digimon as long as it has Garurumon in its Digivolution source. So on our level 5s is where we're actually going to be trying to be aggressive most of the time, and our level 6s are mostly going to be the game finishers, so the fact that this can multi-attack with protection is just really, really powerful, especially since the inheritable ability, which we could take advantage of in multiple different ways, allows us to be able to gain security attack +1 as long as we have 8 or more cards in our hand. So it's not hard for this deck to draw lots of cards and have a decent hand size pretty quickly, so it's just a good, easy way at being able to give our Digimon that extra punch factor, especially since they're going to be swinging multiple times, as well as this card. And speaking of swinging multiple times, that's why I'm going to be running 2 copies of Garurumon from the starter deck 16. So we can actually use this because it has a special Digivolution condition to Digivolve on top of our level 4s with Garurumon in its name for 3, so that way we could, run the deck pretty cleanly and not worry about our colors too much. Then he has a very similar when attacking ability where once per turn we get to discard a card from our hands to unsuspend this Digimon. So he's just basically fulfilling that same type of role on being a level 5 that can multi-attack. His inheritable ability isn't as good as the promos because it's not actually adding any damage, but it is helping control the field where when we attack with our higher stages or when he's underneath something, then we get to discard a card and delete an opponent's level 4 or lower Digimon for just some added extra control. And speaking of added extra control, I'm also going to be running 1 copy of Where Garurumon Sagittarius mode. So this is the promo version where it also counts as a Where Garurumon. It could Digivolve for 0 on top of our Where Garurumons for some added cycling, on top of the fact that if we have a Tamer in play, we get to bounce 2 of the opponent's level 3 Digimon back to their hand as a good way to be able to get rid of some pesky floodgates. Then on top of that, the inheritable ability is just more protection for utilizing our Digimon of the same level, where when our Digimon with Garurumon or Omnimon in its name would be deleted by battle, so again, more battle protection, we get to trash 2 cards of the same level to prevent the Digimon's deletion, again, making it pretty hard for the opponent to get rid of our Digimon if combat is the only way they can get rid of it. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Weregurumon X Antibody from EX05, and this is just, well, the X Antibody card we're going to be running in the deck. So it could Digivolve a little bit more efficiently on top of our other Weregurumons for 1, so that's already pretty decent. But when we Digivolve into this card, we get to discard 2 cards from our hand to unsuspend this Digimon, basically doing exactly the same thing as what the other X Antibody Weregurumon was doing. We just don't get the bounce ability that the other one had, and instead, if this Digimon had Weregurumon or X Antibody in its Digivolution source, we get to return 1 Digimon with Gurumon or X Antibody in its name from our trash to our hand to be able to reuse our trash a little bit more efficiently, which, because the purple stuff does trash cards and cycle through cards, means that we could try to set up our trash as an extra secondary resource, similar to, well, most other purple decks in the game. Then he also has a nice inheritable ability of, when attacking once per turn, if this Digimon has Garurumon or Omnimon in its name, by discarding 1 card, we get to unsuspend this Digimon, allowing our higher stage Digimon to take advantage of multi-attacking, which is really good considering we don't always have access to that security attack +1 that the promo has anymore, so we need all the extra ways that we could aggress as we can. And then when it comes to the level 6s, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Metalgarurumon X Antibody. So I am going to be using the BT9 version just because the BT9 version is just, well, better at killing the opponent than the EX5 version. But if you're on a budget and you just want to play the new card, then the new card isn't a bad card. It's just not winning you the game, unlike what Metalgarurumon X Antibody from BT9 can do, because when we Digivolve up into this card, we get to unsuspend this Digimon. So again, another way to be able to unsuspend our Digimon to try to line up as many attacks as we possibly can, or on the off chance that we're unable to kill the opponent, then we also get to have this Digimon gain blocker until the end of the opponent's turn, so that way we have some good defensive lines of play if we wanted to as well. It's not as good on the defensive side as the EX5 version. Then on top of that, he also has a secondary ability that's adding some extra removal into the deck, where during your turn once per turn, when this Digimon would become unsuspended, which can happen very easily with all of our unsuspend triggers, on top of the fact that, well, during the start of our turn we unsuspend, then if it has Metalgarurumon or X Antibody in its Digivolution source, we get to return all of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest level back to their hand, just to make things even harder for the opponent. And then the Metalgarurumon I'm going to pair up with the X Antibody form is going to be kind of whatever you feel like you want to use. There's a lot of really good answers, but I do just like utilizing Metalgarurumon Ace from the starter deck because, well, it is an Ace Digimon, so we have multiple different ways on how to utilize the card. We can either Digivolve up into it normally. Again, it doesn't matter with the colors because of the name-based evolution that it has. Then it also has that hand counter blast Digivolution to be able to Digivolve it for free onto the opponent's turn, because we're mostly going to be aggressing with our level 5s, and if they can't clear our level 5s with any abilities, then it just makes it easier to use this card. Then it also has a nice when Digivolving ability to discard 3 cards from our hand to be able to gain memory for each card that we trash, so we could use this offensively and defensively. Defensively on the opponent's turn, when we blast Digivolve into this card, means that we could just take away tempo from the opponent, but offensively, it basically makes this card a free evolution because it has a natural evolution cost of 3. Then on top of that, it has a nice when attacking ability where once per turn, we get to discard a card to be able to delete one of the opponent's Digimon with the lowest level for some even more added removal, making it just one of the best Metalgarurumon cards that we have to work with. And then when it comes to the level 7s, you could kind of just customize whatever Omnimons you want. I'm just going to be running 1 Omnimon from BT5 and 1 Omnimon X from BT10 as just good ways to try to finish the game. So Omnimon from BT5 basically is just a free unsuspend and a blitz effect, so that way we could attack it when we unsuspend Digivolving into this card to just try to sneak in that extra damage. And then Omnimon X is is more for the combo play, where we're just trying to swing Digivolve, utilizing X Antibody into this card mid-attack, and then utilize his when Digivolving ability to just not only kill a Digimon, but to be able to look at the opponent's security, take any card we want from their security, and throw that into the trash. So if they don't have a whole lot of security left, like literally one, then we could basically make that attack the attack that's winning us the game. And then when it comes to the Tamers, I'm only going to be running 3 copies of Cool Boy because, well, Cool Boy is one of the best Tamers in the game, especially for this deck because it's a cheap Tamer that's also acting as a searching or digging tool to add to the overall consistency of the deck, looking more specifically for our X Antibody traded Digimon and our X Antibody traded options. Then on top of that, when our Digimon digivolves into the same level and has X Antibody in its traits, which is what we're trying to do, then we get to suspend this Tamer to be able to gain a memory and draw an extra card, again having ways to be able to mitigate our memory when we're trying to utilize our X Antibody Digimon, if not gaining momentum in certain instances. And then when it comes to the options, I'm just going to be running a pretty simple option lineup. I'm going to start off with 3 mental trainings, so I'm not hardcore into the mental trainings just because we do have a small whiff potential, because not everything in the deck is blue, but it's still a good card to be able to use to try to find our blue cards, which is still a majority of the deck, and to be able to use its delay ability is what we're really looking for, to be able to reduce the cost of digivolving into a blue Digimon by 2. Then on top of that, I'm going to be running 2 copies of X Antibody. It kind of doesn't matter which X Antibody you're running. I think like more for combo play, I do prefer the BT9 X Antibody over the Protoform, but I think if you are playing more on the defensive side of things, then Protoform is definitely the better card, especially if you're utilizing the new Metalgarurumon X Antibody. But they're just here just because we do kind of have to run X Antibody options, and like I said, BT9 helps us with our combo game because its inheritable ability allows us to be able to digivolve into an X form mid-attack, while also being a decent security threat at being able to gain us a memory when it's checked in our security and add itself into our hand to try to anti-tempo the opponent. And then we do have other options that we're going to be running. These could kind of just be whatever you feel like you want it to be, because we do have some space to play around with various different tech tools. I'm just going to be delegating it to 1 copy of Ice Wall because it's just there to try to stall out the opponent, and it's so good we can only run the 1 copy to begin with. Then I'm going to be running 2 copies of Hammer Spark out of security to anti-tempo the opponent again, like Ice Wall, but also on the upside we need to use it. It just helps us gain some instant momentum to be able to make more powerful push turns possible. Then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of Full Moon Meteor Impact as just the big removal card out of our security primarily. Then we do have some other cards that we could think about utilizing because, well, Gurumon does have a pretty solid library of cards that we could pull from to be able to tech and customize the deck to your liking. We do just have a ton of other Gabumon and Gurumon based cards that we could use, as well as just other generically good tech that blue and purple can utilize, on top of different playstyles and strategies depending on the types of synergies that you're going to be going for, and we even have an entire purple base that we could swap into if you don't feel like playing the blue base. It's just really up to you and how you want to approach the deck based on the meta that you're playing against, what cards you have access for, and how you want to approach the deck. But I do think it is a pretty fun and powerful deck. The new X cards are getting limited, but that just incentivizes us to use the old X cards in their place when that happens. But this is still just one of the stronger decks that's going to be around while we have the X cards legal. And if you wanted to, you could even think about playing a purple base as well. I'll highlight it here, even though I'm not going to be going over it just because it's doing something very similar to the blue. But I do think that with the future potential upgrades that we know are going to be coming out in BT15, it wants you to lean more towards a blue focused deck, so that's kind of why I started in building around a more blue focused deck now.